Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Today, we're going to review and demo kind of an obscure signature Les Paul. It's not the first one that you would ever think of if you think, oh, what's a signature Les Paul? But it is one that kind of came out during that time when Gibson was working with a whole bunch of different artists. You had things like the Buckethead Les Paul, the Lizzie Hale Explorers, actually a whole bunch of different Explorers. You can check them out on my channel. But this is one that often gets forgotten because he's more so well known for his Schecter signature guitars. Which one are we talking about? Well, it's the DJ Ashba signature Les Paul. So I've been looking for one of these for a while. I actually bought it last year in December. It's just taken me this long to unbox this thing. But you can tell this thing is pretty cool because it gets a custom case. So let's go ahead and get it out of the box here so we can fully appreciate it. Because this thing came to me all the way from France. Most of these things just ended up overseas for some reason. So the exterior, it's a little bit different than normal. It kind of feels like a tweed cloth that you would find on like some amp coverings. This one's actually in pretty good shape. Like it even kind of shifts the way that it reflects light at different angles. I like that. And you get Ashba's logo here, Gibson USA, regular black handle, regular latches and everything. But let's go ahead and check this thing out before we learn a little bit more about him. Yeah, now I think you guys understand how I was saying he's probably better known for his Schecter guitars. So before we, go into this one too far, let's learn about DJ Ashba in case you're not familiar. Right here, this is DJ Ashba. His real name, Darren J. Ashba. He just shortens it. He's best known for his work within the band 6am, but he was also with Guns N' Roses for about 6 years from 2009 to 2015. He's been in other projects like the Bullet Boys and the Beautiful Creatures, and worked alongside many other big-name bands like Motley Crue, Drowning Pool, even Neil Diamond. His Schecter signature guitars, they look like this. Or even one like this. My favorite one is the Crow inlaid version one. He's got a sustainer in there. It's very Avenged Sevenfold-esque, but working with Nicky Six, his signature guitars kind of match his signature bass in a roundabout way. They like their racing stripes. But besides being a musician working with all those different people, he's actually a businessman as well. He owns Ashba Media Incorporated, as well as Ashba Land. I have fond memories of his main band, 6am. Back when I was commuting to college back and forth, they would be playing on the radio all the time. So if you're not familiar with it, here's the songs I would suggest. Life is Beautiful is the absolute #1 masterpiece of theirs. This Is Gonna Hurt. I remember working out to that one. I didn't hear this song back then, but I recently listened to Stars. That was a really nice one. And then Lies of the Beautiful People has one of the most awesome melodic guitar solos at the end as well. So check those out, and then you can dig deeper from there. But I was always curious where the band name 6am came from, spelled S-I-X-X-A-M. And now that I understand a little bit more about like artist names and things like that, it makes complete sense. So you've got Nicky Six in the band, so that's where the 6 comes from, and then AM is the other 2 members, DJ Ashba, James, Michael. So just use the first letters of each of those. My mother always told me to beware of a man with 2 first names, but this guy's got 3, James, Andrew, Michael. But man, does he have some amazing vocals. All right, so hopefully that fills you in. Let's go ahead and finally take a look at this signature Les Paul that I've been looking for so long. So the first thing that's gonna catch your attention is, okay, it's kind of Schecter-like. It's got the racing stripes. Those stripes are a gloss finish, believe it or not. But the rest of the guitar is satin, so generally these things don't hold up too well to scratches. Like, you can try to polish it off, but then you run the risk of buffing this up into a gloss, so it's like, what do you really do? So most of these things are pretty beat up on the used market. But the next thing you'll notice is our pickups are not regular Gibsons. They're Seymour Duncans in here. So we'll talk a little bit more about that on the workbench. On top of our racing stripes, we get the Ashba logo down here. And you're gonna see this like, whoa, do we got 2 toggle switches? No, this is another signature guitar, kind of like the Buckethead signatures that has a kill switch. Now, for some reason, I thought this had 2 toggle switches, and the one down here was just like a toggle on and off. I thought that was kind of silly. But no, it's like a shallow button here. It's not quite as good as the Buckethead kill switch. We'll have to see how it functions, though. But continuing on here, we do have black binding along the top, so it's not a studio guitar. It is a true standard. Same thing with the neck. There is black binding. It's just hard to see. But one of the most unique features of this one actually comes down to our headstock. They have a partial veneer cover over it. So normally, a Gibson Les Paul, they have a complete black veneer over top of it. But this one, I was thinking they just cut it out and then inlaid that over top of the finish. But now that I'm feeling it, the gray is definitely just put over top of the regular veneer. So this does have a full veneer would be my best guess. But we also have locking tuners on this one. But other than that, I didn't even notice to expect this ever. The neck is like kind of black, but you can still see through it. It definitely would have started life satin, but it's kind of worked up into a gloss because somebody's played this. But then this over here is gray. So it's like a black and gray guitar. It's not something you can really appreciate from photos. You really just got to get this thing in person to really appreciate the color scheme. It's not going to jump out and get ya with its colors, but it definitely has a very cool rocker vibe to it. But these things were done up in 2014. Most of them anyways. I mean, how many did they make? There was never a published number, but generally in this time period, Gibson would make about 400. I don't know if these things sold that well. The original retail price was $2,799. They've held value and increased a little bit. It's mainly because fans of his work, they're waiting years and years for these things to show up. And it took me a good 3 years to finally be able to get one of these. You generally see like 1 or 2 per year show up. And when they do show up, they sell fast, kind of regardless of condition. So for today, let's go ahead and throw this on the workbench, take an individual look at its parts and specs, and learn a little bit more about this kind of obscure and strange Gibson signature guitar. Inside the DJ Ashba guitar, let's go ahead and take a look at these pickups. So as we saw when we unboxed this, these are stock pickups. They are Seymour Duncans. You have an Alnico 2 Pro in the neck, kind of similar to what Slash was using. I mean, this guitar was created towards the end of his Guns N' Roses career, so I mean, it kind of makes sense he had that there. Then the bridge pickup is a JB, also known as the SH4. We've seen these many a times on the channel. Generally, I'm a big fan of this pickup, so I have high hopes out of this one. So despite not being Gibson branded, they should still sound relatively familiar to what we've seen on the show. But with our pickups out of the way, you can see very standard cavity routes of the era. They're generally pretty sloppy, not highly polished. Gibson has definitely gotten way better with this over the years, but mid-2010s guitars, and most of them will look very similar to this. And these guitars have a very particular scent. Like, you don't realize that you memorize what guitars smell like, but this era, I think it comes down to the cases, because this is back when they used to have like a vanilla spray in here that made them smell like vanilla. It just kind of stays on the guitar. I'm not sure if that'll last forever. I don't notice it when opening the case. Or maybe it's actually the lacquer on the guitar. I don't know. They just have a certain smell to them. Once you've owned them, you'll be able to recognize it. Paint job's kind of rough along here, but thankfully that's all covered over by the pickup ring. And to continue on, this really doesn't feel very high quality. Now granted, I've never had a muscle car, I've never seen one in person, got to touch the hood and all that. Like, you can feel a very distinct ridge right here. So this feels kind of like they put a decal over top, like you could potentially chip it. I'm not 100% convinced that that is a finish, but you can see like the wood grain underneath kind of. Like what we're seeing here. It's either that or that's just orange peel, which is a very possibility. Like this, brand new, if I felt that, I'd be like, nah, that's not very high quality. But now it's not a brand new guitar, so it's just, you know, kind of collector's stuff that you learn to deal with. So there is a ridge. If you don't like that, don't buy one of these things. But just like the headstock we were talking about earlier, I'm wondering, did this whole guitar actually start off as black and then they masked this off and then sprayed this over top of that? Because it feels to me that this layer is actually higher up. So I wonder, is that what they did? So if we were to remove some of this satin coat, would we actually have the black underneath? I don't feel like destroying this guitar, but there's got to be something going on that they sprayed over top of. But this, once again, is a satin finish, whereas this is gloss. And then it looks like they just sprayed this over top. It kind of looks a bit sloppy. It's not the best work I've ever seen. But anyways, let's go ahead and grab our readings. The JB's very hot at 16.15 k ohms. Our neck position, less at 7.26. And somewhere in between for our middle position, 5.06. Now you might be curious. Okay, so if this is our toggle switch, and this is a kill switch,
which kills the signal when you press it down, as you can see there. What are our controls? So it's a master volume with 2 independent tones. So it's kind of funny that they have a kill switch up here, but they got rid of the opportunity to do the kill switch style, like with the 3-way toggle switch. You just roll one of the volumes off and then you can toggle back and forth. That's kind of funny. And I suppose we should take a close look at this kill switch. So our poker chip, in case you didn't notice, it says alive, which is on, and dead, which is telling you if you press it down, it kills the signal. I didn't know to expect that until I got the guitar in person. But that's what the switch looks like itself. They do have a little cap, just like a toggle switch one, but it's flat. So that gives you a little bit more of an area to tap. As far as wood construction, it's very basic. You just have a maple top with a mahogany body. And the initial spec sheet says it's a weight relief mahogany body. Generally, when they don't tell you what kind of weight relief, we're talking 9-hole. But here's where things get interesting. I'm so glad I looked at the spec sheet again before talking. This has a maple neck? I never knew that about this because it's all covered over. You can't see it anywhere, even if you take a tuner off or you take your truss rod cover off. Yeah, it's a maple neck with a rosewood fretboard that has even more secrets hidden within it. So this actually has a compound radius to it. It starts off at 10 inches, which is a bit more rounded than a regular Gibson, but then it moves all the way up to a flatter 16. So let's verify that. Yeah, that seems about right. 16 up here and 10 right there. You don't find that too often on Les Pauls. But just your standard 22 medium jumbo frets. Again, you do have the black binding, and this is the era where they were really bad with tooling marks and stuff. I mean, it's just you come to expect it at this point. They have gotten better as compared to these. Now, to be fair, this is a used guitar. I mean, some of this could have been caused by playing, but I was buying guitars brand new in 2014, and yeah, a lot of them looked just like this, and the black binding really helps show that kind of stuff off. But black binding means black binding nibs. And it's just your standard acrylic trapezoid inlays on here. The fretboard's looking pretty nice, with just very minimal fret wear. I'm not seeing like any major divoting or anything like that. There is a few small areas of wear that you can't see though. But let's talk neck specs here. We get 1.67 inches at the nut. That increases to 2.06 by the 12th. First fret neck depth, 0.81, and I'll take it at the 11th for 0.89. It's a pretty thin neck profile, but it feels good with the finish on the back. We'll take a look on the contour gauge now. Here you can see the profile at the first fret and the 12th fret. It definitely gets wide and flat. Now we move on to the headstock. So similar to the front of the body, again, you get that design, and then they just kind of sprayed this finish over top of it, I'm guessing. This one came to me with replaced tuners. Somebody had upgraded it to locking Schallers. But thankfully, you know, for collectors out there, I decided to put the originals on there. So if you're interested in some locking Schallers, I'll put them on my website after this. But the truss rod cover is kind of interesting on this. Ashba upside down. I guess he wants to play his guitar and see his name there, or so you can see it. Typically, it would be facing the other way, but it's not like they did it upside down. That's just the way he spec'd it out. And in case you didn't notice, you have a black nut on this. There were quite a few guitars that had that though in this era. But what kind of surprises me is the fact that he didn't go for black tuners on these, or at least a black chrome, because it just doesn't really match the whole blacked out hardware of this. Like our Nashville style bridge right here, it's all blacked out. It's still the regular API branded one. And your tailpiece here is also blacked out, advanced plating incorporated. But these, silver. I don't know. I guess you just wanted them to stand out. Moving on to the back, you can see that gray satin finish back here. And the sides are also gray, and then you can kind of see the black binding standing out a little bit more. But our back plates are the era correct ones that have the built-in shielding. Sometimes they work well, sometimes they don't. And thankfully, this actually has real pots in here. So Gibson branded, hand wired, no PCBs, even though they were using those at this time. So that's kind of nice. And here's what that kill switch looks like. It's just a very basic kill switch. It's a shame it wasn't the San Juan one, because then I probably would have paid attention to this guitar even more. Be like, oh yeah, another one that has a kill switch. It's just a different kill switch than I'm used to. But man, it seems like they took a lot of extra wood out of here. He must not have wanted an L-style one. He must have wanted the regular Les Paul one. Because a lot of times when guys will do that, they'll have to use the SG-style jack because this sticks out just a little bit too much. And some guitars that come stock with this, like the covers will actually sit up too high because this is so large. But this one, it seems like they took a little bit of extra wood out of the top in order to pull that off, because that's got very good clearance. And of course our typical little beardies over here. So the only non-original part on this guitar at this point in time will be our strap buttons. I don't have the originals. The originals are actually black though, so that might be a bit tricky to hunt down. But these Schallers are nice. I actually have the counterparts to include. So not the biggest deal in the world, but even if I had error correct strap buttons, I'd still have to say they're not original. As far as the edge of the guitar goes, it does have the thin binding in the cutaway, so technically you should be able to see the maple cap if you were to remove the finish. But I would actually say I prefer the side profile view of this guitar. It really helps show off the black binding that you can't really see that well from the top. What they almost needed to do was like custom style binding on this. Like a black, gray, black layer. I think that would have looked cool and stood out more. But then moving on to our neck, I guess now it makes sense that I can see all this wood grain. That is maple wood grain. Well, I learned something new having this guitar. That's why I like getting these guitars, having them hands-on, reading about them, learning the most information I can, because it helps me understand what makes these things special as well as everybody else. And the reason why I left one of the tuners off here, because I'm sure somebody might be interested in this guitar and wants to know, hey, is there any modifications that those other tuners did? No. So the replacement tuners look like these, just locking Schallers. They actually had a very slightly smaller footprint. So this 2 is actually left over from the original tuners. You can see it right here. Some of them said 2, some said 1. They used the same screw hole, and this completely covers any evidence that any other tuners have been on here, so nothing to really worry about there. As far as the serial number goes, made in USA, 2014 model. So this is back when they did the year production sequence. So it's not 1st, 5th in this case. So no, it's not a 2019 because there's no 400th day of the year. So just to document the condition a little bit, there's like a very small ding right here. We've got some light impressions on the neck. Of course, this has all been glossed over from somebody playing it. The back is actually in really good shape. There are a few like little impressions down here. I'm not sure what would do that. Looks kind of like maybe a coily chord even. But it was definitely played. I mean, it's not the most perfect example, but as far as these things go, this one's pretty clean. I mean, take a look at some of these other used ones that have shown up on Reverb. Generally, they get like a lot of gouges and scratches. Usually the finish starts to be missing, so I'm pretty happy with this example. It's not too bad. Not perfect, but respectable is what I would say. Looks good from afar. And we even have some of the original paperwork on it. But all said and done, this thing weighs 9 pounds, 5.2 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. Okay, let's go ahead and run through the tones of this guitar. We'll start with clean, then we'll get dirty and do some Ashba stuff. So that was just our neck pickup. So now let's hear it on our bridge. Now our middle position. Nice sounding clean. That neck pickup sounds nice. And that bridge nice and bitey. In the middle, just kind of a combination of that. Now let's go ahead and kick on some distortion. I always find myself going for this because I still see it in my peripheral vision, trying to go down to the bridge, but no, it's down here. That takes a little bit to get used to. But generally speaking, that bridge pickup's so powerful. You don't really want to go off of it, but what's really cool about this is if you roll the tone all the way off, it sounds like this. It's not quite as muffled as other tones, so it kind of just sounds like a neck pickup. It almost kind of gives it like a phaser-esque quack, like out of phase tone almost. I find that works well with the kill switch. Let's kind of talk through that a little bit. So this kill switch, you can kind of get away with the double tap, but it's very small. I definitely prefer the Sanwa style arcade one, but this is, you know, a little bit less in your face. So I get it. I get it. It definitely functions. You could do the buckethead riffs if you want to. As far as the double tapping, kind of hard to do. And then this bridge pickup is really nasty sounding. Like we saw the output on it over here. So it breaks up when you really attack. So here it is with like the volume rolled down to, let's say, like one or two. Just how how heavy you attack it really brings it back to the grouchiness. Our neck pickup, it just doesn't really get all that muddy. That. I can see why Slash likes these pickups too. Now that we know all about the DJ Ashba Les Paul, what are my final thoughts on this thing? Pleasantly surprised. I just thought this was another, I'm going to review a signature guitar that not a lot of people know about. Took a long time to find it. And maybe some of it's, I forgot how much I like 6 a.m. songs. I just completely forgot about that band, and this really, opened my eyes to what I used to know about. So it was kind of cool to relive that. And this thing just really surprised me. I did not know it had the maple neck prior to today. And if you look right up here where the neck joins to the body, you can kind of see some of the maple, like it didn't get stained completely dark enough. So I like seeing that when I play. And this black binding, even though it does not stand out in photos at all, when you're playing it, you definitely see it. Because the neck is a little bit of a darker black, and then you see this, and then the striking white side marker inlays and the fretboard really stands out. I really wish they would have went as far as like putting an ebony fretboard on here so it'd be a completely blacked out stripe, but at the same time I kind of appreciate that dark rosewoody color as well. The kill switch, I was surprised by that as well. I didn't realize that was even there like that. And as we found, it's very functional. You can do some kill switch style riffs. I'm not quite sure what he uses his for. So the racing stripe, the cosmetics of this whole guitar, it might not be for everybody. I totally get it. But I was very happy with this guitar. Maple neck, compound radius, just a whole bunch of weird stuff. So yeah, I would suggest one of these if you happen to like Ashba, you happen to like the way this thing looks, or if you're just looking for a unique guitar in your collection. So Troglodytes, thank you for tuning in today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care. As always, if you're interested in being the next owner of one of these demo guitars, you can check them out on my website, troglysguitarshow.com. There's some links in the description.